Well, anyway, so we are going back into our series on lights, camera, action, even though there's no acts in this one either. I should have picked a different name for this, but you know, it was what Scott named his last one. But we're on our final sermon on this series, and so we are going to be talking about, since we talked about horror last time. Can anybody tell me what question do I have for that? Let's see. Can anybody tell me what story we looked at in the beginning?
Vampires.
Yeah, what about them? What did they do?
They were vamping.
So, what passage in Genesis chapter 6, I believe, did we talk about?
Vamp 666.
So we talked about the Nephilim, right? When the sons of God came down to earth and you know, had children with the human women and gave birth to Nephilim, you know, giant warrior people that they hailed as gods and stuff like that, right? You know, and it was all like messed up, you know, and at that time God was like, yeah, this world's messed up. I'm going to like flood the whole earth, right? And we also talked about other stories about how sin has permeated our culture and how people who do not believe in God are dead to their sin, and so they're the walking dead, you know, so to speak. And so we are all like, we got the cure for it, right? You know, we got the cure and we just hand it out to people, but some people refuse and stuff like that, right? We took a look about, you know, what humans have created and all that kind of stuff, all the horrific stuff that, you know, has happened since the fall of man. But we are going to be taking a lighter note. Since this past week has been Valentine's Day, we are going to be talking about We're going to be talking about biblical romance.
Oh, the glacier. Nice.
But so let's take a look at some of the romantic tropes in romance. So, well, the first one's obvious, romance. You know, guy meets girl, they like fall in love. Yeah. And second, you know, is like love at first sight, which honestly I personally don't believe. If you believe in love at first sight, then, you know, good for you. Honestly, I think it's kind of stupid, but you know, going to get like so much hate down in the comments, you know. But you know, like love at first sight, you know, you meet a guy meets girl, like, you know, I want to give my heart to you, you know, all that kind of stuff. Family drama. There's a lot of family drama, like in Romeo and Juliet, you know, the Capulets and the Montagues, right? Well, you know, they hate each other, and so you know, Romeo and Juliet, you know, are falling in love, and their families hate each other, and all that kind of stuff, right? Commitment's a really big one, you know, like in these romance movies, you know, you really see how committed, you know, these people are to each other. Like, you know, Romeo and Juliet died for each other. Princess Bride, you know, the guy literally like treks across the entire earth, you know, beats up like 3 guys and gets tortured, and then, you know, escapes, and then, you know, like defeats another guy just to get to, you know, his lover, you know, all that kind of stuff. And competition, like, you know, people competing for a girl, you know, like you know, this guy's like, hey, I love you, and this other guy's like, no, I love you more, right? You know, like a lot of stuff going around. So can anybody tell me a real romance book in the Bible that talks more about romance than any other book in the Bible? You forgot this, Richard.
Thank you. This is Song of Songs.
No. That one is just weird. I should have put that in here, though. That just like get a little bit of weird romance in there, you know. So what is in your opinion the most romantic book in the Bible?
Revelations.
That is really romantic, yeah.
That's one way for human.
Like human romance, though.
Romantic. Psalms. Oh no, human.
Yeah, human romance.
David.
No.
But he had like 3 wives.
Well, Solomon had 700, so you know.
I guess that makes him the most romantic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not romantic at all. 700.
So we're going to be taking a look at Ruth. Seriously, I can't believe you guys didn't think of that. Anyways, so let's take a look at Ruth. So here's a little bit of Ruth's background. So in the days in the Judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. That's really fun to say. Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon. That's not fun to say, and Kilian. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. So before we go any further, Israelites, since there was poverty in the land, they went to Moab. Sure, there's poverty, right? You would think that, it's like, yeah, that's a really good reason to move to somewhere where there's likely more abundant food. But they moved to a Gentile region, right? And so living amongst the Gentiles, like communing with them, worshiping their gods, they were already outcasts. It's like, we're going to go live in Moab. Everyone was like, what? What? Excuse me? No, we're not friends, okay? You want to go live with those like creeps, those sinful people, then go ahead, but you're not welcome back here, right? So now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Kilian also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. And so the first point I have for you today is that following Satan, you can gain nothing and lose everything. Following God, you will lose nothing and gain everything. So, kind of like this girl did with, I forget his name, but,
Batman.
Yeah, with Batman, this guy fell in love with Batman. And he... she kind of like gave up her entire life to be with this person. The same thing with Naomi and her husband, giving up her entire life, her entire heritage, her gods, and like went to go and live with Moabite people and to be with them, and like because apparently her land wasn't good enough, so she went to another land. So she followed her own path, and she came on disaster. And that's why Naomi became like super depressed afterwards. And she was like, man, my life is like super bitter. Do not call me Naomi. Call me, I forgot what she called herself. I swear I know this one. Mara. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. Give him a candy. She wanted she was like, oh, my life is terrible and all that kind of stuff. She was super depressed, and that's what following your own path leads you. If you follow your own desires, your own passions, and fall in love with anything other than what is godly, then misery will come to your family, just like it came to her. I mean, her life is pretty miserable because she was in that movie. So anyway, so in 1 Timothy 6:6-10, but godliness with contentment is great gain. For we bought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires, and plunge people into win and destruction. I don't know. Ruin. Oh, it says ruin. Sorry, this font is kind of a little hard to read. But for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. And so, Naomi, instead of, keeping with her heritage, with her people, and like standing with them, decided to pursue, luxury or at least comfortability in another region that would likely provide that for her. But unfortunately, she didn't plan for, if like her sons died. It's like, well, now she's stuck with Moabite people, and now she's forced to go back to Israel, as we see here in Ruth chapter 1, verse 6-9. When Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, now she's interested in moving back, right? She and her daughters-in-laws daughters-in-law, prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, and she left the place where she had been living and set out to the road that would take them back to the lands of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness, as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Wait, is that the... Hang on. Oh, okay. And again, "Look," Naomi said, "your sister-in-law is going back." Oh yeah. So I skipped a couple verses, but Orpah went back. Was like, "All right, see ya, peace," And she went back, but Ruth stayed with her mother-in-law, and Naomi was kind of getting a little upset. And "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging. Sorry, this is fun. But after a while, she kind of got fed up. It's like, "All right, fine, you can come live with me if you want." But now we go into like the part where it's like, all right, cool, and their life starts to turn back around a little bit. So their life starts to turn back around a little bit because what the enemy meant for evil, God means for good, right? God can turn into good. And so what Naomi did, while yes, it was kind of like a little like off base with what God wanted for her life. It was like she didn't trust the Lord, and she instead decided to trust her own way. And once the Lord finally showed provisions in Israel, she went back to Israel, and she regretted her life decisions. But what the things that she regretted, God was about to turn into something good, because out of her line would come Jesus eventually, of course, right? And so my third point for today is that following and loving God doesn't mean living comfortably. It means you need to make sacrifices. Staying in Israel would have been a really big sacrifice because Israel was going through a famine, I believe. And being there, just living there, would be a great sacrifice to God, because being there, you put yourself in a lot of danger of starvation and all that kind of stuff. But but taking yourself out of the land of the Lord and where the temple is and where God resides. Well, back then God resides there in Israel, but now He's everywhere, of course, right? But she took herself out of there and put herself in a land with other gods where they worshipped Molech, I believe, detestable god of the detestable god, and all that kind of stuff. And so she trusted those people to take care of her. But eventually, but as I just told you, favor wasn't with her, so she lost her sons, and she was forced to move back to Israel when they finally got their provisions and stuff like that. But keep in mind, she practically betrayed her people, and by moving to Moab. But when she comes back, now what do you think will happen? Any guesses? What do you think will happen?
She'll be struck by lightning.
Anyone else?
She'll get a boyfriend.
No, not really. She's a bit old.
What's wrong with people?
Well, back then it's not very favorable. So what will happen is that people are going to shun her, be like, you're not of Israel, and she's coming back with the Moabite woman Ruth, right? Because Ruth is coming back with Naomi, and they're going to shun her even more because she's Moabite, right? She's not of Israel. But let's see how God turns that around. All right. So one day, Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for." Now Boaz, who Ruth had been working for a while now, with with whose woman you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, and don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then you go to uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do.
I have no idea why it's doing that.
Satan.
Yes, it's Satan. Be gone, Satan.
Distraction, yeah.
So in case you missed the context, right? You know, the Boaz is a relative of Naomi's, and Ruth has been working for him a little bit, and Boaz has been kind to her, giving her wheat and stuff like that to take home to Naomi. And Naomi realizes that Boaz is a kinsman redeemer. Basically, he'll redeem them from whatever place they're in financially and stuff like that, because he's rich, right? He's related to them, and so she says, hey, go down to the threshing floor where men hang out, and once he sleeps, take note of it, and just sleep there with him. And I mean, back then, that would not be very culturally appropriate. Just be like, hey, this place is for men. Why are you sleeping with me? We're not even married, And it's a pretty risky move on her part, If it goes wrong, it goes terribly wrong. So let's see how it worked out. So the Lord blessed you. The Lord bless you, my daughter, he replies. So she did as she asked. So she did as she was told, and did exactly what she was told. Yeah, and he replied, "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you what you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character." So that's interesting, right? As I mentioned before, Ruth is a Moabite. She would have been shunned, right? She was a Gentile, but everyone was like, yeah, she's a Gentile, but she's pretty cool. She's a cool girl, and everyone seems to hold her in really high regard, despite the fact that she's a Moabite. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good. Let him redeem you, but if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning. So, he's just like, all right, cool. I'll marry you, but, there's this other guy who's more closely related to Naomi than I am. So I'll go ask him if he wants to marry you. And so my third point for today is that God wants a relationship with you, so much so that he sacrificed himself for us. So Boaz, he's sacrificing a lot to do this. He's not just sacrificing time or effort. Yeah, Daniel?
Why is he a demon?
I don't know. It's Romeo. So well, that's not supposed to be God. Just Romeo. So yeah, just saying. Well, anyway, so Boaz is sacrificing his reputation, sort of, right? Because it's a Moabite woman, like I said. She's a Gentile, and coming to an Israel land, like everyone doesn't really hold her in that high regard. People who just meet her would be like, "You're a Gentile, you don't belong here." So Boaz is sacrificing a lot for this girl, and it's really interesting to see how much he loves and respects his family, and how much he is sacrificing. First, he's sacrificing wheat and food to give to her and Naomi, and now he is sacrificing his reputation in order to marry her, to redeem her and her family. And so let's see how this works out. Oh wait, no, sorry. Let's go to Mark chapter 2 then. While Jesus was having dinner at Lewis's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. When the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the sinners and tax collectors, they saw his disciples. Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? On hearing this, Jesus said to him, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have come to call the righteous. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." So It's the same thing with Jesus too. He didn't come for, his own people who were like super righteous. He came for the people who needed help because, sure, Israel is kind of like on the right track, sort of, right? But I mean, it's like he's not here for the people who are doing good. He's here for the people who are doing poor. Because why would he pay attention to healthy people? Why would a doctor come to you and just like take care of you when you're like perfectly healthy, when there's like a guy coughing profusely right next to him? It's like, hey, can you quiet down? I'm trying to help this guy, right? That's what the Pharisees were doing. They were going around just like helping people who are not in need, and all these other people who are shunned by society, lame, deaf, mute, blind, lepers. Lepers, their disease is contagious, so they couldn't do anything. But other than that, they didn't do anything to help those people. They were just more content. It was like going around seeing some random guys like, oh, do you need help? Do you need help with your righteousness, with your heart, or anything like that? And the other guy is just like coughing or whatever. He's like, quiet down, quiet. I'm trying to focus here. All right. It's kind of like the episode of The Chosen that we have just watched this past week. That how this woman with the bleeding had just is being shunned by everybody around her, and nobody is really taking a care for her situation. Well, yes, she is unclean, but those laws of purification and cleanliness is to prevent disease, right? Because you could spread a disease if you're not careful, with that kind of condition. But people don't really get that. They think it's like a spiritual thing. You're unclean. You've clearly done something wrong in your life to deserve this, right? That's how people viewed it. But really, the law was just to was kind of like physical as well as spiritual. But what this woman was going through is spiritual and physical. She was going through like a spiritual depression. She was like, spiritually in need, and she was also physically in need because she was bleeding, right? She had a physical condition that kept her from doing the things that she needed, that she had to do. And all the Pharisees, all these people completely shunned her and started focusing on only the righteous people. But God did not come for those people. He came for the people who were sinful, for the people who needed God, for the people who needed forgiveness, and for the people who needed healing. And so let's take a look at how Boaz handles this new situation that he's been put into. So Ruth chapter 4, verse 1 to 10. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down there, just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, "Sit here," and they did so. And he said to the guardian redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here, in the presence of the elders of my people. It will... if you redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line." And so he's just laying out the situation. By the way, the elders and the are just basically witnesses to this whole thing. That way they can't sue each other. It's like he lied, he stole the land from me. It's like, no, there are witnesses who can cooperate with it, right? It's just a legal thing, right? And so, continuing, "I will redeem it," he said. It's like, man. It's like, at this point, if you're really interested in the whole relationship aspect, you'd be like, dang it, Boaz doesn't get the girl, It's like super, super dramatic, right? And so, then Boaz said, on the day, I love what Boaz does here. He's like saying this piece of information for last. "On the day that the land from Naomi, you will also acquire Ruth, the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead in his property." At this, the guardian redeemer said, "Then I cannot redeem it, because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it." And reinforcing what I just said, Boaz is like, sacrificing, his reputation and stuff like that. That's why he says that he cannot redeem it, because he might endanger his own estate. Because marrying a Moabite woman is like, really bad. And so now in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption of the transfer of property to become final, one party took all his sandals and gave it to the other. This is the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. Might seem strange, but who cares, right? So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself." And he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders of all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from the hometown. Today you are witnesses." And so he married Ruth, and Ruth, continued the line to Jesus and all that kind of stuff. And that is how God would. This is kind of a reflection of how God would later redeem us. How Jesus came from heaven in order to see us in our lowest places, and to see that and turn that around into healing, and so that he can go on and sacrifice himself, not just his life, but his reputation and all the things that matter to a lot of people, in order to save us. Because people hated him, they scorned him, and they just didn't like him. Because he went and preached to the Gentiles. He went to the Gentiles not to abandon Israel, but to include the Gentiles with the Israelites. And nobody liked that. As we will see later in The Chosen, when Jesus starts getting into the whole thing that Israelites and Gentiles will eat at the same table along with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, everyone's going to be like, "What? That is blasphemous. That is outrageous," right? But that is what Jesus intended. Jesus intends for all of us to eat at the Lord's table. And that's why he sacrificed himself for us, so that we could all be together in perfect unity with him. And so with that, let's close out in prayer. And Richard has a few questions that he would like to ask you in our discussion. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you that you have sacrificed yourself so that you can show your love to us, and so that we can show your love to others, God. And help us to show that love to others, God, as we go out and proclaim your word, God, and to speak to others about it. And let us meet you in our lowest places, so that in our darkest moments we can clearly see the light of your love and of your grace, God. And bless us and keep us throughout the rest of the week. And in your name we pray this. Amen. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below if you have any questions or comments on this. So yeah, thanks, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.